أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فاغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع ذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم. إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما علينا إلا البلاغ المبين قالوا إنا تطيرنا بكم لئن لم تنتهوا لنرجمنكم وليمسنكم منا عذاب أليم قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون أتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردن الرحمن بضر لا تغني عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك تقدير العزيز العليم والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالأرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون وآية لهم أنا حملنا ذريتهم في الفلك المشحون وخلقنا لهم من مثله ما يركبون وإن نشأ نغرقهم فلا صريخ لهم ولا هم ينقذون إلا رحمة منا ومتاعا إلى حين وإذا قيل لهم اتقوا ما بين أيديكم وما خلفكم لعلكم ترحمون وما تأتيهم من آية من آيات ربهم إلا كانوا عنها معرضين وإذا قيل لهم أنفقوا مما رزقكم الله قال الذين كفروا للذين آمنوا أنطعم من لو يشاء الله أطعمه إن أنتم إلا في ضلال مبين ويقولون متى هذا الوعد إن كنتم صادقين ما ينظرون إلا صيحة واحدة تأخذهم وهم يخصمون فلا يستطيعون توصية ولا إلى أهلهم يرجعون ونفخ في الصور فإذا هم من الأجداث إلى ربهم ينسلون قالوا يا ويلنا من بعثنا من مرقدنا هذا ما وعد الرحمن وصدق المرسلون إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم جميع لدينا محضرون فاليوم لا تظلم نفس شيئا ولا تجزون إلا ما كنتم تعملون إن أصحاب الجنة اليوم في شغل فاكهون هم وأزواجهم في ظلال على الأرائك متكئون لهم فيها فاكهة ولهم ما يدعون سلام قولا من رب رحيم وامتازوا اليوم أيها المجرمون ألم أعهد إليكم يا بني آدم أن لا تعبدوا الشيطان إنه لكم عدو مبين وأن اعبدوني هذا صراط مستقيم ولقد ضل منكم جبل كثيرا أفلم تكونوا تعقلون هذه جهنم التي كنتم توعدون اصلوها اليوم بما كنتم تكفرون اليوم نختم على أفواههم وتكلمنا أيديهم وتشهد أرجلهم بما كانوا يكسبون ولو نشاء لتمسنا على أعينهم فاستبقوا الصراط فأنى يبصرون ولو نشاء لمسخنا على مكانتهم فما استطاعوا مضيا ولا يرجعون ومن نعمره ننكس في الخلق أفلا يعقلون وما علمناه الشعر وما ينبغي له إن هو إلا ذكر وقرآن مبين لينذر من كان حيا ويحق القول على الكافرين أولم يروا أنا خلقنا لهم مما عملت أيدينا أنعاما فهم لها مالكون وذللناها لهم فمنها ركوبهم ومنها يأكلون ولهم فيها منافع ومشارب أفلا يشكرون واتخذوا من دون الله آلهة لعلهم ينصرون لا يستطيعون نصرهم وهم لهم جند محضرون فلا يحزنك قولهم إنا نعلم ما يسرون وما يعلنون أولم ير الإنسان أنا خلقناه من نطفة فإذا هو خصيم مبين وضرب لنا مثلا ونسي خلقه قال من يحيي العظام وهي رميم قل يحييها الذي أنشأها أول مرة وهو بكل خلق عليم الذي جعل لكم من الشجر الأخضر نارا فإذا أنتم منه توقدون أوليس الذي خلق السماوات والأرض بقادر على أن يخلق مثلهم بلى وهو الخلاق العليم إنما أمره إذا أراد شيئا أن يقول له كن فيكون فسبحان الذي بيده ملكوت كل شيء وإليه ترجعون فاتحة.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم إني أسألك برحمتك التي وسعت كل شيء وبقوتك التي قهرت بها كل شيء وخضع لها كل شيء وذل لها كل شيء وبجبروتك التي غلبت بها كل شيء وبعزتك التي لا يقوم لها شيء وبعظمتك التي ملأت كل شيء وبسلطانك الذي على كل شيء وبوجهك الباقي بعد فناء كل شيء وبأسمائك التي ملأت أركان كل شيء وبعلمك الذي أحاط بكل شيء وبنور وجهك الذي أضاء له كل شيء يا نور يا قدوس يا أول الأولين ويا آخر الآخرين اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحت كل اسم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل النكام اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تغير النعم اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تحبس الدعاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تقطع الرجاء اللهم اغفر لي الذنوب التي تنزل البلاء اللهم اغفر لي كل ذنب أذنبته وكل خطيئة أخطأتها اللهم إني أتقرب إليك بذكرك وأستشفي بك إلى نفسك وأسألك بجودك أن تدنيني من قربك وأن تعزيني شكرك وأن تلحمني ذكرك اللهم إني أسألك سؤال خاضع متذلل خاشع أن تسامحني وترحمني وتجعلني باسمك راضيا كانيا وفي جميع الأحوال متوازيا اللهم وأسألك سؤال من اشتدت فاقته وأنزل بك عند الشدائد حاجته وعزمت فيما عندك رغبته اللهم عظم سلطانك وعلى مكانك وخفي مكرك وزهر أمرك وغلب قهرك وجرت قدرتك ولا يمكن الفرار من حكومتك اللهم لا أجد لذنوبي غافرا ولا لكبائه ساترا ولا لشيء من عملي قبيه بالحسن مبدلا غيرك لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك وبحمدك ظلمت نفسي وتجرأت بجهلي وسكنت إلى قديمك ذكري ومنك علي اللهم مولاي كم من كبيه سترته وكم من فاضح من البلاء أكلت وكم من إثار وكيته وكم من مكروه دفعته وكم من ثناء جميل لست أحلى له نشرته اللهم عظم بلائي وأفرت بي سوهالي وكسرت بي عمالي وقضت بأغلالي وحبسني النفي بعد عملي وخدت الدنيا بغرورها ونفسي بجنايتها ومثالي يا سيدي فأسألك بعزتك أن لا يحجب عنك دعائي سوء عملي وفعلي ولا تفزحني بخفية ما اطلعت عليهم من سري ولا تواجلني بالعقوبة على ما عملت في خلواتي من سوء في وإساءتي ودوام تفريطي وجحالتي وكثرة شهواتي وغفلتي وكن اللهم بعزتك لي في كل الأحوال رؤوفا وعلي في جميع الأمور التوفى إلهي وربي من لي غيرك أسألك كشف ضري والنظر في عمري. إلهي ومولاي، أجريت علي حكما اتبعت فيه هوى نفسي، ولم أحترز فيه من تزيين عدوي، فغرني بما أهوى وأسعده على ذلك الكذا، فتجاوزت ما جرى علي من ذلك بعد حدودك، وخالفت بعد أمرك، فلك الحمد علي في جميع ذلك، ولا حجة لي فيما جرى عليه في قضاؤك، وألزمني حكمك وبلاؤك. وقد أتيتك يا إلهي بعد تقصيري وإسرافي على نفسي، معتذرا نادما منكسرا مستكيلا، مستغفرا منيبا مقرا مدعنا معترفا، لا أجد مفرا مما كان مني، ولا مفزعا أتوجه إليه في أمري غير قبولك عذري وإذخالك إياي في ساعة من رحمتك. اللهم فاقبل عذري وارحم شدة زري وفكني من شد وتاكي. يا رب ارحم زاف بدني وركة جلدي وزكة عزمي، يا من بعد خلقي وذكري وتربيتي وبري وتغذيتي، حبني لابتداء كرمك وسعلف برك بي. يا إلهي وسيدي وربي، أتراك معذب بنار بعد توحيدك، وبعد ما انتوى عليه قلبي من معرفتك، ولهج به اللسان من ذكرك، وتكده زمير من حبك، وبعد صدق اعترافي ودعائي خازيا لربوبيتك، هيهات أنت أكرم من أن تزي من ربيت، أو تبائد من أدنيت، أو تشرد من آويت، أو تسلم إلى البلاء من قفيته ورحمت. وليت شعري يا سيدي وإلهي ومولاي، أتسلط النار على وجوه خرت لعظمتك صاجدا، وعلى ألسول نتكت بتوحيدك صادقت وبشكرك معدها، وعلى قلوب اترفت بإلهيتك محققة، وعلى زمائر حوات من العلم بك حتى سعرت خاشية، وعلى جوارها سعت إلى أوتان تعبدك طائية، وأشارت باستغفارك مدعنا ما حاك ظن بك، ولا أخبرنا بفضلك عنك يا كريم. يا ربي وأنت تعلم ضعفي عن قليل من بلاء الدنيا وعقوباتها، وما يجري فيها من المكاره على أهلها، على أن ذلك بلاء ومكروه، قليل مقتوه يسير بكاؤه كثير مدته، فكيف احتمال لبلاء الآخرة وجليل مقول مكاره فيها، وهو بلاء تطول مدته ويدوم مكامه ولا يخفف عن أهله، لأنه لا يكون إلا عن غضبك وانتقامك وسخطك، وهذا ما لا تقوم له السماوات والأرض. يا سيدي فكيف لي وأنا عبدك الضعيف ذليل الحقير المسكين المستكين. يا إلهي وربي وسيدي ومولاي، لأي الأمور إليك أشكو، ولما من حازج وأبكي، لعليم العذاب والشدة، عمل طول البلاء ومدتي. فلئن سيرتني للعقوبات مع عدائك، وجمعت بيني وبين أهل بلائك، وفرقت بيني وبين أحبائك وأوليائك، فحبني يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي، وربي صبرت على عذابك فكيف أصبر على فراقك؟ وحبني صبرت على حر نارك فكيف أصبر عن النظر إلى كرامتك؟ أم كيف أسكن في النار ورجاء عفوك؟ فبعزتك يا سيدي ومولاي أقسم صادقا لئن تركتني ناتكا لازجن إليك بين أهلها زجيج الآملين ولا أصرخن إليك صراخ المستصرخين ولا أبكين عليك بكاء الفاكدين ولا أنادينك أين كنت يا ولي المؤمنين يا غاية الآمال العارفين يا غياث المستغيثين يا حبيب قلوب الصادقين ويا إله العالمين أفتراك سبحانك يا إلهي وبحمدك تسمع فيها صوتا عبد مسلم سجن فيها بمخالفتي وذاكت مع عذابها بمعصيتي وحبس بين أتباكها بجرمه وجريرته وهو يزج إليك زجيج المعمل لرحمتك ويناديك باللسان أهل توحيدك ويتوسل إليك بربوبيتك يا مولاي فكيف يبكى في العذاب وهو يرجو ما سلف من حلمك؟ أم كيف تولمح النار وهو يعلم فضلك ورحمتك؟ أم كيف يهركه لهيبها وأنت تسمع الصوت وترى مكانا؟ أم كيف يشتمل عليه زفيرها وأنت تعلم ضعفه؟ أم كيف يتكلكل بين أتباكها وأنت تعلم صدقه؟ أم كيف تجره زبانيتها وهو يناديك يا رب؟ أم كيف يرجو فضلك في إتكه منها فتترك فيها؟ هيهات ما ذلك ظن بك ولا المعروف من فضلك ولا مشيبه لما عملت به الموحدين من برك وإحسانك فباليقين أكتو لولا ما حكمت به من تعذيب جهادك وقضيت به من إخلاد معاندك لجعلت النار كلها بردا وسلاما وما كان لأحد فيها مقرا ولا مقاما لكنك قد أقسمت أن تملها من الكافرين من الجنة والناس أجمعين وأن تخلد فيها المعاندين وأنت جل ثناؤك قلت مبتدئا وتتولت بالإنعام متقرما أفمن كان مؤمنا كمن كان فاسقا لا يستؤون إلهي وسيدي فأسألك بالقدرة التي قدرتها وبالقضية التي حتمتها وحكمتها وغلبت من عليه أجريتها أن تهب لي في هذه الليلة وفي هذه الساعة كل جرم أجرمت وكل ذنب أذنبت وكل كبيه أسررت وكل جهل أملته قتمته أو أعلنت أخفيته وأزهرت وكل سيئات أمرت بإثباتها الكرام الكاتبين الذين وكلتهم بحفظ ما يكون مني وجعلتهم شهودا علي مع جواري وكنت أنت رقيب علي من ورائهم والشاهد لما خفي عنهم وبرحمتك أكفيت وبفضلك سترت وأن توفر هذه من كل خير أنزلت أو إحسان فضلت أو بر نشرت أو رزق بسطت أو ذنب تغفره أو خطأ تستر يا ربي يا ربي يا رب يا إلهي وسيدي ومولاي ومالك الرك يا من بيدي ناصيتي يا عليما بزري ومسكنتي يا خبيرا بفقري وفاكتي يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، أسألك بحقك وقدسك وعظم صفاتك وأسمائك وأن تجعل من الليل والنهار بذكرك معمورا وبخدمتك موصولا وأعمال عندك مقبولة، حتى تكون أعمالي وأورادي كلها وردا واحدا وهالي في خدمتك سرمدا. يا سيدي يا من عليه معولي، يا من إليه شكوت أهوالي، يا ربي يا ربي يا رب، قوي على خدمتك جواره واشدد على الأزيمة جوانه، وهب لي الجد في خشيتك والدوام في الاتصال بخدمتك، حتى أسرع إليك في ميادين السابقين وأسرع إليك في المبادرين، وأشتاق إلى قربك في المشتاكين، وأدنو منك دنو المخلصين، وأخافك مخافة المؤمنين، وأجتمع في جوارك مع المؤمنين. اللهم ومن أرادني بسوء فأعرض، ومن كادني فقد، واجعلني من أحسن عبيدك نصيب عندك وأقربهم منزلة منك وأخصهم زلفة لديك، فإنه لا ينال ذلك إلا بفضلك، وجد لي بجودك واعطف علي بمجدك، واحفظني برحمتك، واجعل لساني بذكرك لحجا وقلبي بحبك متيما، ومن علي بحسن إجابتك واكلني يطرتي، واغفر لي زلتي، فإنك قضيت على عبادك بعبادتك وأمرتهم بدعائك وزمنت لهم الإجابة. فإليك يا ربي نسبت وجهي، وإليك يا ربي مددت يدي، فبعزتك استجب لي دعائي وبلغني مناي، ولا تكت من فضلك رجائي، واكفني شر الجن والإنس من أعدائي. يا سريع الرضا اغفر لمن لا يملك إلا الدعاء، فإنك فعال لما تشاء. يا من اسمه دواء وذكره شفاء وتعته غنى، ارحم من رأس ماله الرجاء وسلاه البكاء. يا سابغ النعم، يا نور المستوحشين في الظلم، يا علما لا يعلم، صل على محمد وآل محمد وافعل بما أنت أهل. وصلى الله على رسوله والأئمة الميامين من آله وسلم تسليما كثيرا.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
سورة مباركة الفاتحة.
سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا ولي الله. أشهد أن أمير المؤمنين وإمام المتقين عليا حجة الله. حي على الصلاة. حي على الصلاة. حي على الفلاح. حي على الفلاح. حي على خير العمل. حي على خير العمل. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. لا إله إلا الله. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما.
فرجهم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله أكبر الله أكبر. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم. أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن علي ولي الله عليه الصلاة والسلام. حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح. حي على خير عمل حي على خير عمل. قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة. الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا. الله أكبر. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إنا أعطيناك الكوثر فصل لربك وانحر إن شانئك هو الأبتر. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا. الله أكبر. ربنا فاغفر لنا ذنوبنا وكفر عنا سيئاتنا وتوفنا مع الأبرار. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. أستغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع له لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. يا لطيف ارحم عبدك الضعيف. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على محمد محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه.
اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا شديد القوى ويا شديد المحال، يا عزيز يا عزيز يا عزيز، ظلت بعظمتك جميع خلقك واكفني شر خلقك، يا محسن يا مجمل يا منعم يا مفضل، يا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. اللهم صل على محمد.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. We've been discussing the ta'aqibat after salah, what is mustahab to recite. We mentioned last week that there are many different things that a person can recite, but it's not necessary that they be recited in Arabic. Generally, dua, istighfar, things like that are fine, but it is highly recommended to recite the specific things that have been recommended by the Ahlul Bayt. So usually, when we first start out, we always do the 3 takbirs. That's the first thing. Obviously, most of us are in the habit of reciting the tasbih of Sayyidah Fatima alayhi salam. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. I'm sure there's many different du'as that most people have memorized, like the one for Safar, the general du'as after each salah, most people know that. There are ziyarats and stuff like that, but I'm going to mention a few of the ones that maybe we haven't heard that these are actually mustahab. So there are some surahs that are recommended to recite after every wajib salah. So Surah Al-Fatiha and Surah Ikhlas. Again, not for marhumin, but just in general as a mustahab thing to do after finishing namaz. Ayatul Kursi is recommended to recite as well. Tasbihatul Arba, right? Subhanallahi walhamdulillahi wa la ilaha illallah wallahu akbar. It's recommended either 30 times, 40 times, or 100 times, right? So your pick. In addition, there are two different types of ayat which are also recommended. One is called Ayatul Shahada or Ayatul Shahada, and the other is called Ayatul Mulk. Not Surah Mulk, Ayatul Mulk. So the Ayatul Shahada is, both of these actually are all in Surah Al Imran. So this is Surah Al Imran, meaning Surah 3, Ayat 18 and 19. It's the ayah that begins, Shahidallahu annahu la ilaha illahu wal malaika wa ulul ilm, etc. Those two ayat, 18 and 19 of Surah Al Imran, are recommended. These two ayat are known as the ayah of Shahada, right? Because Allah is saying, this is what He bears witness to. This is what He does Shahadat of Himself. The other one I mentioned is called Ayatul Mulk. Right? This is also Surah Al Imran. These are ayat 26 through 27. It begins, قُلِ اللَّهُمَّ مَالِكَ الْمُلْكِ تُؤْتِي الْمُلْكَ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتَنْزِعُ الْمُلْكَ مِمَّنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُعِزُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ وَتُذِلُّ مَنْ تَشَاءُ بِيَدِكَ الْخَيْرِ إِنَّكَ عَلَى كُلِّ شَيْءٍ قَدِيرٌ. That's ayat 26, and then continues on to ayat 27. So this is also a recommended thing to recite as well. There's also dua wahda, right? Not just for Fridays. It's recommended after every wajib salah as well. Dua ma'rifatul imam, right? Allahumma arifni nafsak, that's also recommended. Dua faraj. So there's a long list of things, right? So you can check different books of taqibat if you want to look at that. Tawdi al-Masail has some of these things listed as well. Or if you have any specific questions, then I can answer it at some other time, inshallah. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم أشهد أن محمد رسول الله صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم وأن عليا حجة الله صلوات وسلامه عليه حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح حي على خير العمل حي على خير العمل قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه إنه كان توابا الله أكبر أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده سمع له لمن حمده الله أكبر سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده الله أكبر أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه الله أكبر سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد الله أكبر بحول الله وقوته يقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل هو الله أحد الله الصمد لم يلد ولم يولد ولم يكن له كفوا أحد. كذلك الله ربنا الله أكبر. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرج. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. الله أكبر. الحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وتقبل شفاعته وارفع درجته. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. الله أكبر. بحول الله وقوته أقوم وأقعد وأركع وأسجد. استغفر الله من كل ذنب وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي العظيم وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. سمع الله لمن حمده. الله أكبر. سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله. الله أكبر. أستغفر الله ربي وأتوب إليه. الله أكبر. سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان الله سبحان ربي الأعلى وبحمده. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم يا من له الدنيا والآخرة. ارحم من ليس له الدنيا والآخرة. الله أكبر. بسم الله وبالله والحمد لله. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك أيها النبي ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام علينا وعلى عباد الله الصالحين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما. اللهم صل على آل محمد. صل على محمد وآل محمد. لا إله إلا الله. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه. استغفر الله الذي لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم ذو الجلال والإكرام وأتوب إليه.
اللهم صل على محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. يا شديد القوى ويا شديد المحال، يا عزيز يا عزيز يا عزيز، ذلت بعظمتك جميع خلقك واكفني شر خلقك، يا محسن يا مجمل يا منعم يا مفصل، يا لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إني كنت من الظالمين. فاستجبنا له ونجيناه من الغم وكذلك ننجي المؤمنين. وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. بل محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
بانو کہاں تلاش کرے اپنے لال کو، بانو کہاں تلاش کرے اپنے لال کو، جنگل میں مار ڈالا ہے زہرا کے آل کو بانو کہاں تلاش زینب کے ساتھ روتی ہے سب مل کے بیویاں جب دیکھتی تھی روز وہ وقت زوال کو بانو کہاں تلاش شبیر دل کو تھام کے غش خاں کے گر پڑے دیکھا جو خون میں غرق نبی کے جمال کو بانو کہاں تلاش شبیر لا رہے ہیں میدان سے دیکھیے اپنے ضعیف کاندھ پہ 18 سال کو بانو کہاں تلاش بازار شام میں وہ اسیروں کا قافلہ عابد نہ بھول پائے کبھی اس خیال کو بانو کہاں تلاش لیلا دعائیں کرتی رہی بعد کربلا یا رب جدا نہ کرنا کسی ماں سے لال کو بانو کہاں تلاش کرے اپنے لال کو جنگل میں مار ڈالا ہے زہرا کے آل کو بانو کہاں تلاش بمحمد و آل محمد صلوات
صلی علی محمد و آل محمد
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Sayyid Hasan, Rizvi, respected elders, dearest brothers and sisters in Iman, Assalamu alaikum, Jameel wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Surah Fatiha is requested for all marhumin listed on the screen, as well as all other marhumin. Surah Mubarak al-Fatiha. Vaishfai Maries is requested for all those in need here and elsewhere, as well as those listed on the screen. Let us recite together. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ 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 أَمَّن يُجِيبُ الْمُضْطَرَّ إِذَا دَعَاهُ وَيَكْشِفُ السُّوءَ. Ya Allah. Let us now invite Sayyid Hasan Rizvi to please come forward for tonight's Majlis. By Muhammad wa Muhammad Salawat. Ya Allah.
محمد وآل محمد صلوات.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعجل فرجهم. أعوذ بالله السميع العليم من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. والحمد لله رب العالمين. والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين بالقاسم المصطفى محمد.
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
ثم الصلاة والسلام والتحية والإكرام على أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين. ولعنة الله على أعدائهم أجمعين من الأولين والآخرين إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد. صلوات على محمد وآل محمد.
صل على محمد وآل محمد.
Mu'mineen, mu'minat, brothers and sisters in Islam and Iman, Salamun alaykum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have been going through the detailed history and lineage of our Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. And specifically looking at the Quraysh, their history, and how they were able to, at first, make a name for themselves within Mecca, within Arabia at large, and then how over time, as they grew and expanded in power and wealth and influence, then eventually, inshallah, when we get to it, we'll talk about how then after all of this is how they became the staunchest opponents of Rasulullah as well. In our last session, we had talked about what specifically made Qusay what helped put the Quraysh on the map, because he was the first one, as we said. And we talked about how he was able to win over and have the custodianship and control of the Kaaba, although there were initial differences between the Quraysh and between other tribes. He ultimately did gain control, and this is the first time Quraysh controlled the Kaaba. He took the various tribes that were scattered throughout, those tribes of Quraysh, the different clans and sub-clans, and he brought them all closer right around the Kaaba and the closest area of Mecca. Then he reconstructed the Kaaba, he built it double its size. He was able to convince the Arabs to start paying taxes and tributes and things like that to help the various programs that were needed to run Mecca, to help the Zuwar, things like this. And he started to delegate all the different tasks to upkeep and take care of the Zuwar, take care of the Kaaba and things like this. So he was mainly known for his ingenuity, his organization, and how he tried to manage this. And this same idea passed down. We ended last time by talking about his two sons. I think you can start with these slides now, Miriam. So his two sons, Abdul Manaf and Abdul Dar. And we talked about how initially there was a conflict between both of them because Abdul Dar was the eldest son. So tribal culture stated that the eldest should now gain control and just take all the responsibilities of the Kaaba, whatever his father did. But Abdul Manaf, he was the one that actually had more honor, his akhlaq was better, he had this nobility that others recognized. So there was an issue. They fought it out a little bit. What ended up happening is they continued this idea of dividing up some of the duties. Abdul Dar, being the eldest, basically continued on with controlling the Kaaba and taking those sort of positions. He held the key and he would protect the Kaaba. Abdul Manaf, he continued on with serving the Zawar, hosting them, giving them food, drink, water, things like this. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Then in the same way, once it passes down, again, you see that there's a discrepancy and a fight amongst the children now. So this is the grandchildren of Qusay and the various children of Abdul Manaf and Abdul Dar. So same issue happens. They're also fighting about who should gain control. Finally, again, I'll skip. There was a lot of there was almost a war that broke out between the Quraysh, but they were able to find mediators to help them, stop it. And they decided, fine, we'll continue on by splitting up the various duties. So, and I think I mentioned them last time, so I'm not going to go through them again. But basically, we're going to be focusing on Hashim today. And Hashim, the duties that he inherited were the same as his father's, meaning he was in charge of a khidmah, giving water to the Zawar, taking care of them, making sure they were comfortable, hosting them, etc. So you see that khidmah seems to have been something that he picked up from his father, and then we'll see passes down like generation after generation after generation. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about Hashim today, who again is the great-grandfather of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. And in the same way how we talked about Qusay, the way that he kind of put Quraysh on the map in terms of organization and the honor of the Kaaba, Hashim did something similar. He increased the nobility and the status of the Quraysh even more so than perhaps his grandfather did, but he did so in a different way, and inshallah we'll discuss that. I think you can move on to the, I don't know if we need, can you go check the next slide? I forgot what it is actually. Okay, yeah, we'll come back to this then. We'll come back to this slide. Okay, first let me just give some background information. So Hashim ibn Abdul Manaf, the great-grandfather of Rasulullah. His real name is actually Amr. So how did he get this name or nickname Hashim? So Hashim or Hashim in Arabic means to crush, to crumble, to shatter, to break something apart. So what happened during his time? And again, this matters, his nickname matters, and why he was named that matters. Again, it's not just some random information that we're going to bring in Kahoot, in a couple weeks. These little details matter because they're things that carry on from previous generations, and they matter for future generations as well because the Arabs don't forget things like this. Okay. So in around Hashim's time, Mecca was being hit with a huge famine. There was large amounts of starvation. Whatever little bits of resources they had pretty much gone away. Right? So that's in the background we have right now. Now, we talked about their economy before. The economy of the Arabs, they didn't really have one. They were just built to survive. Whenever they would find water, they would use it, and then if it got used up, they would go somewhere else. They might be able to graze certain kinds of animals. Sometimes they planted certain crops, but it was few and far between. It wasn't the norm for everybody. So that's why you had the Arab, the Bedouins, traveling from place to place to just find new resources to survive, right? To use something up and then move on. The city dwellers, the Mecca's didn't move around. So whatever they were able to do, whatever they could grow, whatever they could use was just amongst themselves. So they were pretty much living to survive. Like in our terms, we'd call it paycheck to paycheck. That's pretty much how they were living. So they would trade amongst themselves, but that's pretty much it. So they didn't really have much to go by. But of course, when you have drought, right, when your animals are not eating properly, all these other factors, when it hits you in the desert like this, then of course there's going to be a famine and there's going to be starvation. And it was a problem. So Hashim decides to, right, in Mecca, he takes a trip to, at that time, what we call Sham, Palestine, right, that sort of area. When he goes over there, Again, the Quraysh are still wealthy individuals, but again, all of Makkah is suffering. So what does Hashim do? Hashim was always known as a generous individual, but there's only so much you can do with generosity, right? You have to be smart with your generosity too, right? Handing out blank checks sometimes is not the best thing to do. Khair. So Hashim, he saw that they had bread, and he had actually taken camels, and I think he had brought some more camels as well. So in Sham, in Palestine, he brought bread and camels. When he comes back now to Makkah, what he decides to do to try to feed as many as possible is that he slaughters all these camels, which are his and things that he had just purchased. He slaughters all these camels. He takes the bread, and rather than just kind of give them out piece by piece, which would not have worked, he took the pieces and decided to break them up, right, into like smaller pieces. Then he made this sort of soup-like dish, right, which in Arabic is called tharid, basically like a bread soup. So he takes this broth, right, with a little bit of camel meat, so it's like a camel broth, and he puts in these breadcrumbs and he starts serving it to everybody. So because he crushed and crumbled that bread, something which was never really done before by the Arabs, that was, the verb for, again, breaking and crumbling and, shattering something is hashama. So he was known as Hashim, the one who broke this stuff apart and simultaneously broke and destroyed the starvation and famine that was existing amongst the Arabs at that time, or the Makkans. And this was simply which he invented a new dish. That's all he did, which is called tharid, which you can still find in the Arab world now. It's found in places, right? Tharid. It's not exactly like halim. It's not exactly like nihari, although the way that sometimes you and I eat it, maybe it's similar. But that's pretty much what he had done, right? It's like a bread soup with, pieces in there. That's what he had done. And this tharid, right, it's just a random food. Tharid is actually mentioned in riwayat, right? There's many riwayat about the actually benefits of this food and how the Ahlul Bayt used to be one of their favorite types of dishes. I'll just share one riwayah. This is from Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. He's reported to have said, أَوَّلُ مَنْ لَوَّنَا Ibrahim alayhi salam. The first person to start to make colorful meals, meaning different dishes that had different colors, was Nabi Ibrahim alayhi salam. وَأَوَّلُ مَنْ هَشَمَ ثَرِيد Hashim. And the first person to break up bread and to make this new dish called tharid was Hashim. Right? So even he's known in the riwayat as somebody who invented this dish. Right? So it became a very, very famous thing because it ended this famine. People saw it with a lot of barakah. Right? A dish was created and ended famine. Right? It's not a small thing. So this was that. So this is how he got his name. And initially, again, his popularity so far was because he was an intelligent individual, a great leader, and in these kind of scenarios, he was able to use his mind, use his generosity, and figure out new ways of protecting, saving the Arabs. And actually, besides even just protecting them and saving them, he devised a way to actually make sure that these kind of issues would never happen again. Right? The famous saying we have, give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, then you feed him for a life, something like that. So Hashim was one of the first to say, look, if we just keep doing this over and over again, if I just have to, or if any Arab has to go and just be generous to our own people, this can't last. There has to be a better way. We can't just survive like this anymore. So we have to figure out something. Now, remember, the pre-Hashimi economy we've discussed before. But trade, you might think that the Arabs were just doing it everywhere. That's not the case. Trade at the time of Hashim, or before him really, was what? The Makkans by themselves would again trade with one another with what they had just so that they could survive, and that's it. It wasn't there as a business. It was just there as, you kind of read in your history books. Two different tribes, one of them was, had a certain kind of meat, one of them had a certain kind of vegetable, and they would just trade so they had, one would, you just delegate different duties. So that's it, right? So that's what the Makkans were doing and most Arabs were doing at that point. They were just growing certain things and trading with each other just to survive. But even there, it was very difficult. Because we talked about this before, how they weren't trusting of one another. So a lot of them refused to even trade. Whenever they wanted to go and maybe travel somewhere else to go and trade with somebody else, right? If they didn't have that crop, if they didn't have what they needed, some sort of spice or material or resource, they would have to go somewhere else. The problem is this. The Jahil mentality hadn't gone away yet. So sometimes they would go on these routes, and what would happen? Bandits, thieves, other tribes would come and confiscate everything. So they were stuck now in two things. One is they would only trade with amongst themselves, which limited everything. And then the second is that if they thought about, okay, if we do go outside, there's no safety, there's no security, we're gonna kill. Our tribe or our clan will get wiped out. This is not gonna work out. And our enemies are there too. Not just fellow Arabs that are following our own religion, right? The Byzantine Empire was there. The Persian Empire at that time, the Sasaniya, they were there as well too, right? So all these empires existed, right? And they saw them as kind of hostile. They said, okay, how are we going to be able to trade like this? We don't know what to do. So here now, this is where Hashim realizes that, okay, we have to change the economy somehow. We can't survive like this anymore. What can we do? They're not used to trading with outsiders. They haven't done that yet. So he devises a few things. He says, okay, so far, the only money that we have incoming is from the taxes that Arabs will give to help take care of the Kaaba and maintain everything, and help take care of the Zawar, and of course the generosity of the Arabs, mainly the Quraysh, mainly people like Hashim. And additionally, what would happen is when Zawar would come, sometimes they themselves would pay these tributes and taxes and things like that to the Quraysh. So this is pretty much all you have in terms of money. It's not a lot, right? Because the Zawar are only coming once or twice a year. So it's not a lot of money that they have. Okay. Now what happens? They notice, or Hashim noticed at least, that, okay, there are people who come, when they come for Hajj or Umrah, right, at that version that time. Whenever they're coming to the Kaaba, they're coming to Makkah, I see these non-Arabs coming here, and they're trading amongst themselves. He said, I see all these different materials and resources, things that you and I could use, things that one person from the north is grabbing, and he's meeting somebody in Makkah that's coming from the south, and they're trading it. He's like, this is lucrative business. I need to figure out a way where we can get to the north, and we can trade with them. We can get to the south and trade to them. And even if we can grab things from the north and bring it to the south, we can do this ourselves too. We can beat these individuals at their own game, and we can start to take over the trade economy. So what does he do? He knows that it's dangerous. These trade routes are not something that you can just go very easily, right? So, okay, what can you do? Well, two options, again, given that time. The main option was what? Let's just go and fight everybody. But clearly that's not going to work, right? They would have been outmanned, so we can't fight them. But Hashim was an excellent diplomat, right? And again, not because he played politics with people, but because he had good akhlaq. He knew how to speak with people. He was able to come up with things that were good compromises and beneficial to all parties involved. So what does he do? Well, let me tell you after a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. He's got basically two groups that he needs to go and try to make agreements and pacts with. So the first is that he said, okay, there are different trade routes. I think now you can go back to the slide. All these different trade routes that are available, which you'll see in a minute. All these different trade routes, along the way, there are fellow Arabs that are there too, right? So, again, I don't want you to get overwhelmed by all these things here, but look at all the land routes. That's all you have to look at, right? And then Makkah, you can see kind of down there where the red and the yellow sort of meet. And you can see the purple line for Hijrah, but we're ignoring that for now. So he said, okay, all these different routes which are going north, which are going east, which are going south, and all these different directions, there are various other Arab tribes there, but they may have issues with us. So what am I going to do? How am I going to actually develop something? So when he goes there, because, again, his great akhlaq, because of his nobility, and because what he would do is he wouldn't just go and just start kind of randomly making compromises and arguments. Because of slowly, surely what happened was the name of the Quraysh started to go and become known amongst other Arab tribes. They said, look, because everybody knew the Kaaba had sanctity. It was a holy place that everybody would visit. So when Hashim would go, he would say, look, I'm from the family of Qusay. I'm from the family of Quraysh. I'm a Qurayshi. We are the ones who maintain the Kaaba. So a lot of tribes, just out of respect for the maintainer and the protector of the Kaaba, they said, okay, fine, no problem. We'll let you pass through and we'll protect you along this route. So some tribes agreed to that. Other tribes, they said, okay, what kind of mutual agreement can we make? So, for example, if you look at the route from Makkah, Medina, and then you go towards the north, right, where you're getting to Al-Quds and Sham up to Damascus, right, that area. They wanted to go up in that area. They said, okay, so some of those tribes on the way, those Arab tribes used to travel themselves to Sham, right? Sham at that time, by the way, was controlled by the Byzantines, or technically the Roman Empire and the Byzantine extension of that. So along the way, they said, look, we normally go, the Arab tribes, we normally have to go ourselves and deliver our goods over there. So they said, look, Hashim said, we're going to go there anyway. Why don't we take your stuff up there for you for free? We can take your items, we'll go and deliver them for you. So you save yourself a trip. He basically offered them like almost free delivery. He said, all you have to do is give a safe, passage, let us go through, give us that security, and we'll take your stuff for you. They said, okay, that's a good deal. So that's what they started to do. So that's how those initial lines amongst the Arabs in Arabia, that's how they started to get solved. It was a few of these deals that were made, but a lot of it was just him going and saying, look, we are the protectors of the Kaaba. He said, okay, just out of nobility and out of love for the Quraysh and out of love for the Kaaba and the protectors of the Kaaba, okay, fine, we'll allow you to come through these. Okay, but now we have another issue. As we said, Sham, and even if you look, I don't think it's on this map, but if you look towards Yemen, and then if you go west of Yemen, that's where Abyssinia, meaning Ethiopia, was. These were also, again, Byzantine or Roman controlled. They wanted to go south as well too, because you couldn't always go north. When the heat got bad in the summer, north was a terrible idea, right? It was tough to go. Obviously, you know how the desert heat is. To travel in the caravan, to go like that in the summer, wasn't a good idea. Said, okay, we have to figure out how we can get to the south as well too. Let me share how they did that. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. So again, we have most of these areas are in the orange area at least was Byzantine controlled, and then so there's some areas here that are not shown on this map at least, but some other areas are also Byzantine controlled. So what does Hashim do? Now he could have just written letters to at that time Caesar or Kaiser, right, the head of Rome or the Byzantine Empire. He could have just written a letter, made some agreement. Hashim himself, he went to the Roman Empire. He went to go meet Caesar. He went and he had a conversation with him and a discussion with him. And because of how well the conversation went and how much respect that Caesar actually had for Hashim, he said, okay, we will give you safe passage to Sham. Right, again, that was Byzantine controlled. So all those orange areas said you can go into any of our territories. That also included, and I think you can go to the next slide now. I think there's a different map over there. Yeah, so this map is a bit different, right? So you see the areas up top, the ones that have that kind of red, orangish outline, that was the northern area that was controlled by the Romans. If you go down, you see Nubian states. Under that, Aksum. Aksum is basically is Abyssinia, right? So you guys know Najashi. Najashi is basically just the word that they use for king. So that was that area. That was also controlled. They had a king there, but it was controlled by the Roman Empire as well. So because of his directly meeting with Caesar, he said, look, you can come now. I've sent a letter directly to the king of Sham, who at that point was one of from the tribe of Banu Ghassan. He said, I told him, and I've also told the Najashi, the king of Abyssinia, both of them now will open up their trade routes to you, so you can go and trade there freely. On top of that, he said, anytime you trade in any of our territories, it'll be tax-free. This is something that, it's a big deal, right? Even right now, if you think about trade, immigration, all these things, getting tax-free imports and exports, that's a big deal. And Hashim was able to secure it, and what did he do? He just went in person and had a conversation with him, right? If I actually had the conversation, I'd share it, but unfortunately, I didn't find that in any of the books of history. So he had this, and Caesar himself, again, writes to the king of Abyssinia to give him all this. So now, what do we have? We have these two different routes that have developed. One, if you can, again, go to the next slide. I think this is the zoomed-in one, or partially zoomed in. I think go to the next transition. So you have the one that's going to the south, which was needed. Why? Because you needed, when it was summer, you needed to go south so you can get better weather, right? Okay, but what about winter? Then you want to go north. All right, next transition. So now these two routes were made, which were called rihlatain. These two journeys or two caravans. And these two rihlatain were mentioned, and this is the whole point of Surah Quraysh. Let's go through now these ayat of Surah Quraysh and put it in context, and then this will make a lot more sense to you. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. لِإِلَافِ Quraysh. For the peace and security and protection of the Quraysh. إِلَافِهِمْ رِحْلَةَ الشِّتَاءِ وَالصَّيْفِ. Their peace and their security when? Winter and summer. This is talking about these two trade routes that Hashim started, that continued on up until the time of Rasulullah and everybody else. These two things became the most lucrative things that they could do. The Arabs then would take yearly, I think twice a year they would go, right? Once in summer, once in winter. They would go and they amassed a lot of wealth from this way, which was never done before, right? فَلْيَعْبُدُوا رَبَّ هَذَا الْبَيْتِ. Because of all this, Allah's saying, look, because of what I've done for you, I've given you this protection, right? Hashim was a muwahhid. He said, I'm the one who's protected your northern route and your southern route. I've protected you this whole time. I open up the other hearts of the Arabs so that they could allow you protection. And all this is what? So that now you have fame and fortune and power. Quraysh, Allah saying, I gave it to you. So the least you can do is do ibadah to the Rabb of this bayt. Meaning you're around the Kaaba, you're the protector, fine. You need to worship me. I'm the one who gave you all this in the first place. الَّذِي أَطْعَمَهُم مِّن جُوعٍ وَآمَنَهُم مِّن خَوْفٍ. Remember that famine we talked about? Allah saying too, I am the one who fed you. I gave you a way out of this famine by making you completely independent now financially, because I gave you all of these riches, right? So I fed, who has fed them from hunger and made them safe from fear. After this is now when Quraysh, they had the organization before. They had the honor and respect of protecting the Kaaba, but now they became not just wealthy, they became ultra wealthy, because they were able to now go through all those trade routes themselves. They didn't have to wait. They did these two ones we told annually, right, to the north and to the south. They took some things from the north, they brought it to Mecca and would sell it there. They brought some things from Mecca, then brought it down to the south. They basically controlled all these routes. It's at this point where Mecca now becomes a trade center. Things that did not come to Mecca before, now the Quraysh were bringing them. You see, it wasn't just about this too. It wasn't just about this. This is not exactly why Hashim, I mean, yeah, it's an amazing thing that he did. But like we said, it's his akhlaq and the way that he was a genius, an akhlaqi genius with his akhlaq, which changed things. Let me share one more story before we end. If you can recite a salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Now, you and I know what happens normally when people in this country or in the West, what happens when they win the lottery? Usually the ones who end up winning the lottery, right? They get, kind of wealthy very quickly. They typically don't come from wealthy backgrounds. So what do? They lose the money very fast. They just start buying whatever their nafs wants, whatever their desires are, and they lose the money quick. Right? So the money's gone. They don't spend it in a very smart manner. They might claim one thing ahead of time about what they'll do with it. Some people say, I will invest, or I'll take care of my family. But they really don't do that. They just spend so much on themselves, and then they end up losing it, right? What Hashim did is once he started to realize that there was this huge amount of wealth now amongst all of the Quraysh, right? Again, he taught the Quraysh how to trade. He taught them where to go, how to do this. He was the first one. Okay. Now he said, look, there is a quote-unquote zakat on this. Not the actual zakat that you and I have as the Islamic ruling, but zakat in the sense that, look, this is Allah who has provided this to us. This money is not really ours. We need to share this wealth. What he had instructed and commanded all of the Qurayshis to do. So each merchant of Quraysh, whenever they would go and trade, he said, you have to find one faqir, one poor person from within your clan, within your tribe, and you have to start sharing wealth with them. Even if they don't come with you, no matter what they do, once you go and you make your trade, you amass an amount of wealth. And again, it was a lot. According to some historians, the average amount that some of these traders would make from each trade was about 30,000 dinar. A lot of money. You can basically, if I'm not mistaken, you can buy a house with this during that time, probably more than one house. That's how much money they were making from trading, right? So it was a lot of money. So he didn't tell them, hey, when you get back to your tribe, when you're back in Mecca, give a nice little one coin, one sikkah, 5, 10 dinar handout to your, everybody who's in need. He said, no, you share this wealth, but you share it in a way where this individual now comes out of poverty completely. So little by little, these merchants, when they would go, the Quraysh merchants, they would find somebody, the poorest of their tribe, their clan, and they would start sharing their wealth. So much so that they would not just take them out of poverty. They wouldn't make them quote-unquote middle class, they would make them wealthy as well too. They would help make them independent, and they became merchants as well. These are things that we've already discussed before that the Ahlul Bayt themselves have done, and they instructed us on how to do this as well too, right? I'll just share 2 riwayat. The first from Amir al-Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salatu wassalam. He's reported to have said, أخرج من مالك الحقوق. He said, take out the huquq. He's not just saying take whatever's yours. There's haqq that is in your wealth. وَأَشْرِكْ فِيهِ الصَّدِيقِ. And go to your sadiq, go to your friend, and make him sharik. Again, don't just give him a little handout. Make him a partner in your wealth. What we call handout or redistributing your wealth. That's the common term that's used. That's what he was saying to do. وَلْيَكُنْ كَلَامُكَ فِي تَقْدِيرٍ وَهِمَّتُكَ فِي تَفْكِيرٍ. And he said, make sure your speech is controlled, it's measured, And make sure whenever you engage in something, it's well thought out. Right? Don't just randomly just do things. If you do all of this, تَأْمِنُ الْمَلَامَ وَالنَّدَامَ. If you can do all this, Amir al-Mu'mineen says, you'll remain safe and you'll never be stuck in a state of regret. Right? And you won't ever blame yourself for not actually sharing it when you had the chance. Another hadith in Mu'an, Imam Ja'far al-Sadiq alayhi salatu wassalam. إن الله تبارك وتعالى أشرك بين الأغنياء والفقراء في الأموال. Allah has made the aghniya, the wealthy, the ones who are independent, and the fuqara, the ones who are completely dependent, who are in complete need. He has made them what? Ashraka fi amwal. He said they are sharik, they are partners in wealth. Allah is not saying that the rich person's wealth, he has to start giving it out to the poor person. He says, no. Allah is saying, I have designated wealth to be divided amongst both of them. They're both to be partners in this sort of wealth. فَلَيْسَ لَهُمْ أَن يُصَرِّفُوا إِلَىٰ غَيْرِ شُرَكَائِهِمْ. It's not correct, it's inappropriate for you to go and spend this wealth on somebody who's not sharik, who it's not been delegated to. Allah is saying, I'm telling you how to spend this wealth. This is not yours. I've said that I've made some of you wealthy, you take this wealth, and I've made some people who are poor. Your job now is to figure out who's the sharik in this and give it out to them. We've talked again about how the Ahlul Bayt were not just giving small handouts, they were bringing people out of poverty. They were changing the lifestyle of individuals. And I know this is difficult for many of us, those who, alhamdulillah, have been blessed with this kind of wealth. But this is the way that the Ahlul Bayt have said, look, the same way we see other communities. People are so jealous of certain other communities, how they take care of one another. Look at how self-sufficient they are, how independent they are, how they're able to buy politicians and things like this. Well, yeah, you know how they can do that? Because they take care of one another, right? They support one another. They're not at odds with one another. If they have businesses, they don't fight with one another. They decide, hey, let me help you out. Let me assist you in this. And this is something we talked about before. In the East, the culture is still there. You have many stories where, for example, in Iran, in the same area, you usually have shops of similar nature, right? So there's usually like a district, if you guys have been, in Qom and Mashhad, etc., where one district will, or one street area will sell motorcycle helmets and just that. Another area will be just mechanics. That's just kind of the way that it's been designed in many areas. Right? But the shop owners and the shopkeepers, you don't see that they have that sort of capitalistic, like shark-like mentality with one another. Right? We have many stories like this, but a simple one is this. You have an individual who comes in, has a need, says, I need so-and-so item. And the shopkeeper will say, check across the street, go over there. One of the co-workers has asked, he's like, okay, but why'd you tell that person to go across the street? I know that we have that item. Why'd you send it over there? He said, look, business for me is doing, alhamdulillah, it's very well. I've earned enough for my day. But I know across the street he's not doing so well, so why wouldn't I share in this and send him over there? Right? We are all partners in this, and we're all sharing in this risk. This is a mentality that I hope you and I can understand a bit better. We shouldn't be competing in wealth, but we should be cooperating, right? We don't have a capitalistic mentality, which I know we've been drowning in this for so many years living here. That's one of the negative consequences of having moved to the West, is that their culture has become part of us. Rather than spend money, again, amongst the ones that Allah has said to spend and to share and to give out like that so that we all could be independent together, we end up saying, well, there's more investments I can get in. There's more business projects, X, Y, Z, right? We just want to keep increasing. And again, I'm not saying don't invest, don't increase in wealth. You can do that. But if there's at least one individual in our community who's, living paycheck to paycheck, they're struggling. And we have many like that. Those who struggle with student loans, those who struggle with their mortgage, car payments, things like this, it's incumbent upon all of us. We don't know everybody in the community like that, but I'm sure you and I at least know one other individual who is living that kind of lifestyle. And if I am somebody where, alhamdulillah, Allah has blessed me, I'm doing well, I am independent, my wealth is making money for me. Like, okay, well, let that wealth not just make money for you, let it help out and bring somebody else out of poverty, or at least out of middle class as well too. Right? This is the way that you and I should be thinking, right? Following in the footsteps of the Ahlul Bayt. And trust me, when I say this, we talked about this in the Jummah khutbahs. The way that things are going, it's very possible that things will get very difficult in America, right? Not just for Muslims, but in general, right? Every empire has to come down, and it looks like this one is kind of seeing its, it's taking its last few breaths. And when that happens, there's many of us who might be struggling like that, right? We have to have that adat and get used to sharing now, because when we don't have a lot, it's going to be much tougher to share back at that point. Share when you're wealthy, so it's easier to share when you and I might be going through those difficulties. Salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. One more salawat ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. When we think about the bala and the masa'ib after Karbala, although we know that there were some men who were there, namely Imam Sajjad and a few others who were taken captive, our mind normally jumps to the women and the children more than anybody else. Right? We have this idea in mind that, yes, it was difficult for all of them, but whatever males were present, they should have a bit more sabr. Right? They can probably handle a bit more and tolerate a bit more than some of the women can. So usually in these nights after Ashura and these nights of Safar up until Arba'een, usually we think about Zainab so much, right? And how difficult this journey was for her until she returned back to Medina. But you see, Zainab's, although again, of course, she's al-Masa'ib and her Masa'ib is great and it's very difficult. But she has been raised in the household with Ali and Fatima and Hasan and Hussein and Kulthum. Her household is different and she's been raised differently. What about these other women, these other widows, those who have given up their husbands or their brothers, or they saw their children go and give their lives in Karbala? Even there, you see many of the women, because of their iman, because of their sabr, their tahammul, even giving up and sacrificing their male members of their family, it was still a difficult process for them, but they had sabr there too. But sometimes we forget of how difficult this was for Rabab, the mother of Ali Asghar, the mother of Sakina. Rabab's difficulties are not like anyone else's. She is in a league all her own. May Allah give us that kind of sabr when we go through those difficulties. Rabab is the only mother who is waiting outside of the tent. She's not like Layla, she's not like Farwa, she's not like Zainab, she's not like any other mother who had sent out their children. When they send out their children, they knew that our children will not come back. When they come back, they will come back as shuhada. But Rabab, when she sends out Ali al-Asghar in the hands of her husband Hussein, she is expecting her son to come back. She is expecting at least his thirst will be quenched. But when Imam Hussein begins coming back, when he looks into the eyes of Rabab as he's a few feet away, and he goes back and forth saying, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, ridan biqada'ihi wa tasliman bi amri, and finally makes it back to the camp, and Rabab and Sakina now comes out, and they both are asking, has Asghar's thirst been quenched? And when Hussein removes his abba and he shows them that the bloody neck and the dead body of Asghar, this is when they start breaking down. And what else can Rabab say but say, Bunayya, Bunayya, amithluka yunhar. Bunayya, do they slaughter babies like you are a camel? Is this what you have to do? There was nobody else like Rabab in Karbala on Ashura. Hussein and Rabab now have to go behind the tents and they have to dig a small hole together. No other hole, no other grave was this size in Karbala, but they have to dig a hole this size. Imagine a mother of her 6-month-old son having to witness this. And even after this difficulty, now as we move forward, she has to witness her Sakina being slapped and whipped over and over and over again. And maybe this is the only sukoon that she had. But now when they reach Sham and they think that they're going to be released, and the head of her husband is released back and it comes first into the hands of Sakina. She's now thinking maybe in the morning we'll wake up and now we will be able to go home, and Sakina, I can't wait to take you home and take care of you there. But then when they wake up, when Imam Sajjad and Bibi Zainab come to Rabab and tell her, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un, Rabab must have been thinking, I already gave one, what else do I have to give? I've lost my Hussein, I've lost my Asghar, and now I give my Sakina here in Sham. And this is why the riwayat say, when they were when they went back on Arba'een, when they were in Karbala, when they were getting ready to return to Medina, Imam Sajjad tried to take all the mothers one by one to take them. Rabab said, everyone else has someone to return to in Medina. I have no one to return to. My Hussein is here, my Asghar is here, and my Sakina is left in the prison of Shah. لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون رضا بقضائه وتسليما لأمره صلوات على محمد وعلى محمد. Ya Hussein, Ya Hussein. جنگل میں برے گر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب ہے شہر مدینہ عابد کو کسی طرح بچا لائی ہے زینب ہے شہر مدینہ جنگل میں برے گر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب ہے شہر مدینہ جنگل میں برے گر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب شہر مدینہ بندوا کے رسن ہاتھوں میں اور خود بے سنا کے گھر بار لٹا کے گھر بار لٹا کے دیوار برے کفر کی ڈائی ہے زینب ہے شہر مدینہ جنگل میں برے گر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب ہے شہر جس شعر میں شہزادیوں کی طرح رہی تھی نازوں سے پلیٹی نازوں سے پلیٹی سر ننگے اسی شہر میں ہو آئی ہے زینب اے شہر مدینہ جنگل میں برے گر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب اے شہر جو ہجر پدر میں رہے ہر وقت پریشان سوئے نہیں ایک آن سوئے نہیں ایک آن اس بچی کو زندان میں سلائی ہے زینب اے شہر مدینہ جنگل میں برے گر کو لٹا آئی ہے زینب اے شہر دارستی بہت بائی کو جس بائی کے دم سے دل پھٹتا ہے غم سے دل پھٹتا ہے غم سے ساحل پہ اکیلا اسے چھوڑ آئی ہے زینب اے شہر مدینہ جنگل میں برے گر کو لٹا
आई है ज़ैनब है शेर छः माँ के असगर को भी झूले के बजाए दुख दर्द छुपाए दुख दर्द छुपाए आगोश में तुरबत के सुला आई है ज़ैनब है शेर मदीना जंगल में बड़े घर को लुटा आई है ज़ैनब है शेर मदीना बर मोहम्मद वाले मोहम्मद सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम।
ज़ियारत अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिस आदम सिफ़वतिल्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिस नूह नबील्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिस इब्राहीम खलीलल्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिस मूसा कलीमुल्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिस ईसा रूहुल्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिस मुहम्मदिन हबीबिल्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या वारिस अमीरुल मुमिनीन वलील्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न मुहम्मदिल मुस्तफ़ा अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न अलील मुर्तज़ा अस्सलामु अलैकी या इब्न फ़ातिमत ज़हरा अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न ख़दीजतल कुबरा अस्सलामु अलैका या सारल्लाहि व इब्न सारिह वल वित्रल मौतूर अशहदु अन्नका क़द अक़मतस्सलाह व आतैतज़्ज़काह व अमरत बिल मअरूफ़ व नहैत अनिल मुनकर व अताअत अल्लाह व रसूलहू हत्ता अताकल यकीन फलअन अल्लाहु उम्मतन क़तलतक वलअन अल्लाहु उम्मतन ज़लमतक वलअन अल्लाहु उम्मतन समिअत बिज़ालिका फ़रज़ियत बिही या मौलाय या अबा अब्दिल्लाह अशहदु अन्नका कुन्त नूरन फ़िल अस्लाबिश शामिख़ा वल अरहामिल मुतहहरा लम तुनज्जिसकल जाहिलियतु बिअनजासिहा वलम तुल्बिसका मिन मुदलहिम्माति सियाबिहा व अशहदु अन्नका मिन दआइमिद्दीन व अरकानिल मुमिनीन व अशहदु अन्नकल इमामुल बर्रुत तक़ियुर रज़ी अज़्ज़कियुल हादियुल महदी व अशहदु अन्नल अइम्मत मिन वुलदिक कलिमतुत तक़वा व अअलामुल हुदा वल उर्वतुल वुस्क़ा वल हुज्जतु अला अहलिद दुनिया व अशहदुल्लाह व मलाइकतहु व अंबियाअहु व रुसुलहु अन्नी बिकुम मुमिन व बिया बिकुम मूक़िन बिशराइ दीनी व ख़वातीमि अमली व क़ल्बी लिक़ल्बिकुम सल्म व अमरी लिअमरिकुम मुत्तबि सलवातुल्लाहि अलैकुम व अला अरवाहिकुम व अला अजसादिकुम व अला अजसामिकुम व अला शाहिदिकुम व अला गाइबिकुम व अला ज़ाहिरिकुम व अला बातिनिकुम अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न रसूलिल्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न नबील्लाह अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न अमीरुल मुमिनीन अस्सलामु अलैका या इब्न हुसैन अश-शहीद अस्सलामु अलैका अय्युहश शहीद व इब्नुश शहीद अस्सलामु अलैका अय्युहल मज़लूम व इब्नुल मज़लूम लअनल्लाहु उम्मतन क़तलतका व लअनल्लाहु उम्मतन ज़लमतका व लअनल्लाहु उम्मतन समिअत बिज़ालिका फ़रज़ियत बिही السلام عليك يا أولياء الله وأحباءه. السلام عليكم يا أصفياء الله وأوداءه. السلام عليكم يا أنصار دين الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار رسول الله. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي محمد الحسن بن علي الولي الزكي الناصح. السلام عليكم يا أنصار أبي عبد الله. بأبي أنتم وأمي طبتم وطابت الأرض التي فيها دفنتم وفزتم فوزا عظيما. فيا ليتني كنت معكم فأفوز معكم. السلام عليك يا أبا الفضل العباس ابن أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا ابن سيد الوسيين. السلام عليك يا ابن أول القوم إسلاما وأقدمهم إيمانا وأقومهم بدين الله وأهوتهم على الإسلام. أشهد لقد نصحت لله ولرسوله ولأخيك فنعم الأخ المواسي. فلعن الله أمة قتلتك ولعن الله أمة ظلمتك ولعن الله أمة استحلت منك المحارم وانتهكت حرمة الإسلام. فنعم الصابر المجاهد المهام الناصر والأخ الدافع عن أخيه المجيب إلى طاعة ربه الراغب فيما زهد فيه غيره من الثواب الجزيل والثناء الجميل. وألحقك الله بدرجة آبائك في جنات النعيم. السلام عليك يا رسول الله. السلام عليك يا أمير المؤمنين. السلام عليك يا فاطمة الزهراء سيدتي نساء العالمين. السلام عليك يا حسن المجتبى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله الحسين وعلى 9 المعصومين من ذريتك علي بن الحسين ومحمد بن علي وجعفر بن محمد وموسى بن جعفر وعلي بن موسى ومحمد بن علي وعلي بن محمد والحسن بن علي والحجة بن الحسن. أجل الله فرجه وسهل الله مخرجه وظهوره. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
اللهم كلك ودمر حسن صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وليلة محافظا وقائدا محافظا وليلا مسكنه سوا وتمضيه فيها طويلة برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. صلوات.
لبيك يا حسين.
لبيك يا حسين.